What is up, fight fans? Welcome to OTH MMA, the podcast, the YouTube show. We're still figuring it out a little bit. Right now, we have a preview to UFC 275, Yuri Prochazka versus Glover Teixeira, happening next weekend, or I guess it's maybe this weekend, depending on when you're watching this, June 11th. In Asia, out of Singapore. But before we get to the main three fights, it's a loaded top third of the card or loaded top half of the main card. Before we get to that, Jamie Frodo MMA to my left did an amazing piece on the first real, true road to the UFC. They did one back in 2015. It was a little wonky. It was kind of like a pseudo tough Ultimate Fighter. This time you're going to have 4 8-man contests. You're gonna have, basically. You know what? I'm gonna stop blabbering on. I'm gonna let Jamie take it over from here. Jamie, talk about it. Martin, thanks for joining us. Let's get into it.
Yeah. So this road to the UFC Singapore, is going to consist of 4 8-man tournaments across the UFC's 4 lightest men's divisions. So that's 125, 135, 145, and 155. It also includes 4 special bouts that will be 5-rounders on 2 a day over the 2 days that the road to the UFC takes place, and those 4 fights will be competing directly for a UFC contract, similar to the Contender Series. The other fights, the undercard on the road to the UFC, will be competing for a spot in the semifinals, and these will be aired the 2 days before UFC 275, all live, all from Singapore, and all with fans. And if you're lucky enough to be going to Singapore to 275, you've also got free access to the road to the UFC. There's a couple that of fighters that are worth keeping an eye on, including the Aussie bantamweight and Eternal FC champion Sean Etchell, who's going up against surging 19-year-old Shudo phenom. I'm going to butcher this name, Takeru Uchida, who's won every fight by finish. So that's the headline bout for episode 2, which I'm pretty excited for. A lot of these guys coming out of the Asia Pacific region just don't have the exposure, but they can throw, man. And the wrestling credentials in that part of the world is only going up.
Awesome. Well, I mean, we've been saying for a long time that the UFC has to do a, kind of tournament style, bracket style competition, and really excited that there's going to be a bunch of these guys who maybe weren't able to get into the UFC or weren't able to get into America or weren't able to have their careers highlighted, that they finally get an opportunity to get that notoriety and make a name for themselves. But speaking of making a name for themselves, Zhang Weili and Joanna Jędrzejczyk are fighting once again. This time it's only 3 rounds at 115. Joanna hasn't fought since she got that hematoma. I mean, it's possible that giant thing took 2 entire years to heal and go down. But I want to get into the UFC 275, the main 3 fights, the 3 fights that were really all showing up and potentially buying, streaming the card for. Zhang Weili, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I've talked. Jamie, you've talked. I'm going to pass it over to Martin. Martin, give us a little bit of preview of what this fight's going to look like.
Thanks, Tom. In fact, thanks for having us again, obviously. I have the luxury of living in the UK, so I get all the fights on BT Sport for free. So I technically don't need to be a criminal and stream it. I'm a law-abiding citizen. No, I think you made a good point about Joanna Jędrzejczyk taking that 2 years out. And I think when you have fights that are that crazy, like most people have seen this fight, and if you've not, I would go and watch it because it's, in my opinion, the best female fight ever. And those kind of fights, it's amazing as a fan to watch. But for the practitioner or the athlete, it takes years off their career. And Joanna Jędrzejczyk taking that 2 years out, like that 2 year layoff period, to kind of let her body recuperate could be massive for her in this fight. Because since then, we've seen Yan Wei Li. She's had two absolute wars with Rose Namajunas. The first one when she was actually knocked out. She was knocked out in round one with that crazy head kick. So I've got a feeling this will play in Joanna's favour, that she's recuperated less damage since that war. I know people talk about ring rust quite a bit, but I don't fully buy into ring rust, especially not if you're sparring with high-level opponents. Like, I think if you're somebody like Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who trains at American Top Team, like, you're sparring with world-class opponents. And I know sparring and fighting are slightly, they are different, but it's all reactions and it's all muscle memory. So I believe as long as you're still sparring, and she'll be getting a range of sparring partners, that it's not like smaller gyms where you only train with the same certain people. Like, she'll have people, like females her weight across the whole of America and across the world coming to train. So she'll be getting those rounds in. So I don't feel that the ring rust will pay quite a bit. And I can see Joanna Jędrzejczyk getting the decision victory here next week.
Yeah, 100%, Martin. I actually agree with you. I have Joanna in this, probably by decision. I think with the improvements that we've seen Wei Li make over the 2 years that Joanna has been out, obviously her offensive wrestling has improved significantly. We saw her use it against Rose, to score a few takedowns that, she didn't really seem to be able to keep Joanna on the ground whenever they fought. But whenever Rose got top position or put Wei Li on her back, Wei Li stayed there the rest of the round. I think that obviously training with Henry Cejudo has helped her offensive wrestling substantially, but defensively, I think that if Joanna can use her length to either, scramble into top position or, just get into guard, I don't think Wei Li really has improved that much over the 2 years, and I completely agree with you about the ring rust thing. I actually think that the 2 years out might have helped Joanna significantly, because from following her on Instagram, I think she took basically the entire first year out because that was COVID. But a lot of people forget that the first fight was the week before COVID flipped everybody's lives upside down. So Joanna had a full year of recuperation immediately after that, before she even started training again at ATT. And as Amanda Nunes has told us recently, ATT, she was the first. Amanda Nunes was the first woman at ATT, and then Kayla Harrison started showing up. Joanna showed up, and all these other female fighters started showing up that are obviously going to be closer to Joanna's weight class and providing her with better opportunities to train. If Wei Li's out in Arizona with Cejudo, I mean, sure, she's got Cejudo, she's got Figueiredo, but she doesn't really have anybody that that matches Joanna's build, because obviously
Mike
Joanna's.
Tyson.
That's true, but nobody that really has Joanna's build to give her that pseudo simulation of a sparring partner with somebody like Joanna. And I wasn't that impressed with the improvements that Wei Li made against Rose the second time, and I think that if the cardio isn't going to be an issue with it only being a 15-minute fight, I think that Joanna's pressure is going to get the better of Wei Li.
Well, being that you both went with Joanna, I'm going to go with Wei Li Zhang here, or Zhang Wei Li. The reason being is in the first fight, I think that could have went absolutely either way. And I think it was just a judge's preference at one end is why Zhang Wei Li got it over Joanna. But I am going to kind of lean on the side of, being when you don't do your sport, at least professionally, with a crowd, for 2 years plus. There's going to, and I guess it's totally an opinionated question. Some people have it, some people don't. But I think we've seen a lot more people experience, whether it's ring rust or just a little bit of just kind of like maybe caught up in the moment or the surrealism of being back. I think that definitely does have some type of effect, and I think that has something to be playing here. I know Zhang Weili had, or she was coming off that fight 6 months ago against Rose, which was like I mean, that was the fight that everyone was kind of upset that it wasn't, or no, that was a different fight. Sorry, I'm kind of all over the place. I know you guys are kind of on the other side of the pond where it's closer to the end of the day. It's still technically the work day for me. I probably shouldn't be saying that, so my mind's kind of a little bit scattered here. But I'm just gonna go with Zhang Wei Li. I think that she has been more active. Fighting Rose, that first one, I'm not going to say it was a fluke. It was more or less a really adept or inept. No, adept is the right word. Really good adept focus from Rose Namajunas and Trevor Whitman to realize, like, hey, when she does this, it's going to be great to fake the low kick and go up high. I don't know if that's a true barometer of where Zhang Wei Li is compared to Rose Namajunas. The second fight is much more of a barometer, of a metric for where she stacks up. And I think we've seen, and a little bit of MMA math, we've seen Rose outclass Joanna Jędrzejczyk a couple of times now. Maybe outclass is a little bit too strong, but we've definitely seen her get those wins there. And I think Zhang Wei Li is a little bit more hungry. She's a little bit younger. Having Joanna be 34, going on 35 years old at the time of the fight, I think, for a woman they already have a little bit of a shorter career, and who knows what that hematoma and all that damage accumulation at 2 years older can do for Joanna, kind of as she comes into this fight here. So I'm gonna go with Zhang Wei Li, half because you guys went with Joanna, the other half because I'm gonna lean on the side of activity versus inactivity, and then if you want to play, Zhang Wei Li was in some wars. Sure, she was in some wars, but Joanna Jędrzejczyk hasn't finished somebody in a really long time, and I don't think anybody's expecting this fight to end via decision. So, with that being said, I think we're going to see it go 3 rounds, and I think that also plays a little bit more towards Joanna, being that it's 3 rounds and not 5. If it was 5-round fight, coming in of 2+ years off, I think that really starts to sway things. Zhang Wei Li being 3 rounds, it's a little bit more of a pick'em. Looking at Tapology, we have 63% of the votes coming in on Zhang Wei Li of the 620 total people. Basically, everyone is taking this fight to go to decision. And right now, I'm not seeing any odds on Tapology, but you have a little bit of the smaller fighter in Zhang Wei Li, but she's a little bit more of the stockier fighter. I don't see this fight having a ton of grappling in it. So yeah, I'm still going to go with Zhang Wei Li, despite some of those opinions there. Does anyone have anything else to say, contribute, or add, or combat at me before that shoddy preview I just gave?
I just seen the, sorry, I was just going to say I just seen the odds there, and Zhang Wei Li is a -170 favourite. I'm unsure how kind of odds work in America, but I presume that means you need to put £100 on to get, or $100 to get $170.
Yep.
170 to get 100 back. She's
right.
She's a heavy favorite. Whenever I saw that Joanna was like plus 230, I think whenever I hit it, whenever the odds first came out, I fucking hammered that shit.
She's at 150 now.
I think I got her at I think I got her at plus 200 or just shy of it. I got in on that. The odds came out. I was like, nah. If it's 3 rounds, it's Joanna's. If you go back and watch the first Joanna Weili fight, at the start of the second round, Weili bites on every single feint that Joanna throws, and Joanna's hips are so flexible and they rotate so naturally. Obviously from her kickboxing background, and it's this tendency to bite on the feints, especially from the legs, that I think Trevor Whitman, and Rose exploited in the first Wheelie fight. So I'm riding the Queen of Violence hype train. I can't wait.
Yeah, there's something kind of off-putting about Joanna to me, and her kind of like subtle smirk, and like she's out of the rankings now, and she's like, I don't care, like I'm still the best. It's not like there's something that's off-putting about that to me. I find that generally off-putting for anybody, not necessarily just a woman. Like don't everybody like come at me or whatever. Like I find it off-putting when John Jones does it too. But well, now people are gonna say that it's like a black thing. Okay, either way, I'm just gonna get off the topic. Regardless. I don't know. I think, like you said, that she bit on a lot of things and she had to pay the price when she fought Rose. And I mean, you tell me, was she still biting on a lot of things when she fought Rose a second time? I think that has probably been cleaned up a little bit. And knowing that that's something, Zhang Wei Li and her team probably got one of the best teams that China can offer. I think that, they're going to be looking at that, and that's something they're going to come in a little bit more educated about. So again, I'm going to lay on, not lay, but I'm going to put a couple on Zhang Wei Li here. But I totally agree with you, Jamie, that, for plus 200, it's in no way that wide of a line. I think we could. I honestly, I would say this is probably a pick'em fight at this point because you got somebody who won the first fight. She's been active, but she's got some of these more inexperiences as compared to Joanna. But then you have Joanna who's had the time off, but we don't know where that's really going to put her. She's had this really long, effective career resume, fighting the best of the best, and was one of the pioneers of women's MMA in general. So if that's not a pick'em fight, I don't know what is. So I expect that line to move a little bit closer, which means, hey, you're getting tremendous value at getting Joanna, probably even now at what did we say, plus 170?
She's plus 150 now.
Okay, so I maybe that'll probably stay around there. Maybe she'll only go to maybe 130 because of her inactivity. We'll keep that line from a pick'em, but all good conversations. Is there anything else before we move on to the real Queen of Violence, Valentina Shevchenko?
The only question I have for you guys is, does the winner of this get a title shot?
No, they're both coming off losses. I think there's a lot of things that could play out, but I don't know. That division just doesn't have a ton of people in it and a ton of notable names. And at the end of the day, this is prize fighting and what's going to sell. So actually, I know I said no, but now I'm probably going to say yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think if Joanna wins, there's an argument to be made. Obviously, her and Carla is kind of the prototypical wrestler versus striker fight. I don't know if Wheelie wins, it's a little harder to make that argument. And you've also got to remember that Jessica Andrade is now on a pretty good streak at 115 and is committed to staying at 115 and wants another title shot. So I think the winner of this and Jessica Andrade could be a nice little title eliminator for women's 115.
Yeah, I was going to say Jessica Andrade. I mean, her two wins are Cynthia Calvillo and Amanda Lemos. Amanda Lemos now sitting in the back of the pack at 10. I think you'd be hard pressed to make that argument for her getting anywhere near a title shot without at least one, but probably two more wins, especially considering, her most recent title shot. She just got, absolutely demolished by our next competitor. Valentina Shevchenko taking on Talia Santos here. Before we started today, I went back and I watched a little bit of Talia Santos in one of her more recent fights. And I got to tell you, I wasn't thoroughly impressed. Her most recent fight against Joanne Wood, and not that Joanne Wood is, a phenomenal fighter, upper echelon, but I wasn't impressed with the overall speed of Talia Santos in relation to, and I just forgot her name, Joanne Calder-Woodwood. So she did a couple of things. She actually got her legs beat up a little bit at the beginning of that fight. She was landing a couple of right hands, but again, she knocked down Joanne Calderwood, jumped on top of her. Calderwood got up, kind of separated a little bit, was able to land a couple more leg strikes, and then it ended up going back to the ground, got choked out with like 5 seconds left. Talia Santos did to Joanne Calderwood. I think when you watch that fight and then you directly go watch literally anything from Valentina Shevchenko in the last 3 or 4 years, you're going to notice that there's an immediate power difference, there's an immediate speed difference. And I mean, even looking at Valentina Shevchenko versus Lauren Murphy, who isn't top quality competition either, she was landing check hooks. She, if Lauren Murphy got too close, she was hitting her with a check hook. If she stayed away, she was picking her apart with the feet. I just don't know what Talia Santos is going to be able to do that's going to kind of start to solve the puzzle that is Valentina Shevchenko. Shevchenko, I love her demeanor. She's like got this quiet confidence of like, I'm the best. I don't have to let everybody know it like Rose does. Like, I know that I'm going to go out there and dominate absolutely anybody who they put in front of me because she's that many degrees higher than anybody else. But she's not like cocky with it. And I listened to the 3.5 hours of her on Joe Rogan, and it just kind of put into perspective that this has been something like some girls when they're little, they do dance. Some they do tap. Some they do, a sport. Valentina Shevchenko, from the age of 4 or 5 years old, her mom put her into martial arts. So this is something that she does for fun, that she's going to continue to do for the entire rest of her life. Her trainer is one of her best friends and idols that she looks up to. And that he, being a Russian guy with MMA background, he's going to push her to the absolute end. She trains, I think she said, now that she's older and more experienced, she only trains maybe once a day. And I think that we've seen that work for a lot of people, aka Max Holloway, where they're not having these crazy schedules. They're not sparring a ton, but they're working on some little minor tweaks here and there to just keep their body in great competition. I think this is a non-starter. Valentina Shevchenko, I don't see how Talia Santos gives her really any bit of any challenge.
No, I completely agree with you, Tom, and I agree with what you're saying about the training. I think when you get to a certain level, when you get to the level of Valentina Shevchenko, and you get to the level of Max Holloway, you're not going to get miles better. So I think knocking your body in like 2-3 sessions a day isn't amazing because you've got the tools. It's just keeping them sharp, and as you said there, like the minute details. So it's that whole cliche, like fights are won on inches. So it's like the smallest wee details make a huge difference. So kind of honing on that rather than destroying your body at that level is amazing. Obviously, when you're coming up, when you're learning your craft, you need to be training a lot more. You need to be sparring and stuff like that. But to come back to the fight, like Santos, like obviously our last fight, she choked out one of my peeps. And Joanne Wood. But Joanne Wood, she's changed her whole fighting philosophy over the last few years. I remember it was our coach, John Wood, was saying on a podcast that they come from a traditional Muay Thai background. And obviously with Muay Thai, it's kicks score a lot. So she was very kick heavy. But they were saying they noticed in MMA, and I don't know if this is true or not, but they were saying they were losing a lot of decisions because the judges favour punches in MMA. So they were looking to get more kind of boxing heavy. I don't know if that's kind of contributed to Joanne Wood's kind of decline in the last few years. That, and she's getting older as well, and she's fighting the top of the food chain. But she seems to be this kind of gatekeeper that if you beat Joanne Wood, you're in next for a title. And Santos, to her credit, like she's on a 4-fight win streak, and she's beat some really tough people. She beat Meatball Molly McCann, she beat Gillian Robertson, Roxanne Modafferi, and Joanne Wood, obviously.
Do you really count Roxanne Modafferi as a win worth bragging about?
Yes.
Always. I will not stand for Roxy slander.
And also purely because my other homie, Casey O'Neill, just beat Roxanne Modafferi, so it's pretty huge. But
but she's a Rangers fan.
I know we've all got our pros and we've all got our cons. But I like as well. I don't know how this fight's going to go for Santos, and that way I don't know how she's going to approach it because I was quite shocked to actually see her grappling pedigree isn't that high. But there's not very often you see people in the UFC that are a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Well, that's in the modern day, that's quite unheard of. But she's got that kind of traditional Muay Thai background where she's not going to beat Valentina Shevchenko on the feet. Valentina Shevchenko is the elite of the elite in female striking. And it's scary how good her grappling's got over the last few years. Like, I remember when she fought Jessica Andrade, she just went, I'm not even going to strike with this girl. I'm just going to take her down because she's known to be a good grappler. And I'm just going to show you how good I am. Like, she's that good. She's not even using her best weapons. So
Didn't she lose a round to Jennifer Maia, or something happened like where they were grappling and Jennifer Maia had like a small semblance of like positivity? So then Valentina Shevchenko's like, oh, okay, you think I'm not good on the ground? Okay, go watch this. Give me the hardest grappler that we got. Give me the strongest woman we got, and I'll just out grapple her. Like she's just like that quiet confidence, but she's gonna be like, okay, all right, got it, noted. I'll go show you guys. Awesome.
And it seems like she is obsessed with martial arts. She's obsessed with learning. And I feel there seems to be a real kind of trend with people from that kind of Eastern Europe who took up dance as kids and how that attributes to their footwork. Because we see it a lot with Lomachenko, like the boxer. He's got some of the best footwork in boxing. And he took up dance as a young kid. And I remember Valentina was talking about how when she was young, she took up, it was either dance or it was either like ballet or gymnastics or maybe both. But she took up both, and she's attributed that to her amazing flexibility in the cage and her amazing footwork. And I don't see any way that Valentina Shevchenko, doesn't get the win via stoppage next week. But my only question is, where does she go? Like, she's cleaned out the whole division. It seems the only logical next step, now that Casey O'Neill's injured and she can't fight her, is to fight the winner of Amanda Nunes and Joanna Pena. That's the only fight I can see happening. That's the only fight that makes sense if she gets through Talia Santos.
When she gets through Talia Santos, I think it's fair enough to say that. As you guys both said, there's nothing you guys have said that I have to add to that, other than the fact that Valentina speaks like 7 languages, which, just building on what you said, is, she's such a sponge for information and knowledge. She takes to everything like a fish out of water. Shooting, archery, hunting. I'm fairly certain you could drop her in a touring car and she'd probably win a touring car championship. She's just so good at everything she does. I was lucky enough to see her fight Lauren Murphy live at 266, and it was just not even like halfway through the second round, it was like, please just finish it, because she's so far ahead of everybody. I actually got into an argument on Twitter with one of my followers because he bet the fight to go the distance. I was like, bro, what are you smoking and where can I get some? Because if you think Valentina doesn't finish this, there's something wrong. So yeah.
To your point, I mean, you're looking at Talia Santos, and Talia Santos, she didn't finish Molly McCann, she didn't finish Jillian Robertson, she didn't finish the beast in Roxanne Modafferi. She did finish Joanne Wood by rear naked choke, but at the end of the day, it seems like Valentina's only getting better. She went to a decision with Liz Carmouche, but then went out, got the grounded pound from Crucifix over Shukagian. She got the decision over Jennifer Maia. She got another elbows from Crucifix over Jessica Andrade, and then the grounded pound Lauren Murphy. I mean, at the end of the day, like, Valentina's only getting better. She's only getting more and more finishes, and it seems like that's not the trajectory that we see Talia Santos going.
Absolutely. And let's also not forget that the second fight with Amanda was a split decision. One of the judges did give it to Valentina, and I personally, on rewatching it, gave it to Valentina as well. And she's obviously submitted the current women's 135 champ in Juliana Pena, and I don't see this version of Valentina losing to any version uh of Juliana Pena, even the one that beat Amanda, because I that version of Amanda gets flatlined by this version of Valentina, guaranteed.
Well, with that being said, let's move on to. Oh, I must be a storm because my computer is starting to glitch. It's kind of like an old guy in his knees. When my computer glitches, it means it's going to rain. Same thing, people who've had knee operations and elbow operations. Glover Teixeira versus Yuri Prochazka. Speaking of old guys, Glover Teixeira here. Love to see him getting the championship at the later stages of his career. It's just a shame that he has to run into the absolute buzzsaw hype train phenom that is Yuri Prochazka. I was watching an interview with Yuri Prochazka the other day where he was like, "Hey, listen, I basically just am horny to fight." And coming from some people, I would be like, "Oh, haha, that's a funny line." Coming from him, it wouldn't surprise me if he beats the crap out of trees and then has his way with them. So I'll pass it over to you, Martin. First, what do you think about this upcoming bout? And basically, should we all wear black to watch this fight for the end of Glover Teixeira's career here, the funeral?
Firstly, I think I just love Glover Teixeira. I just think that's so gangster. You're deep in your 40s now. You've just won the world title. It would have been. He could have just retired there and then, and he could have just went. Do you know what? I've done what I've set out to do in martial arts. I've won the world title in the UFC. I'm just going to put the gloves down and I'm going to ride into the sunset. But no, he decided. Do you want to know who's next? A 6'2" Czech Republic guy who lives in the woods and punches trees for fun. But this guy, Yuri Prochazka, I know he's not been in the UFC for that long, and a lot of people go he's kind of rushed his way to the title, but that's nonsense. The guy said about, I think, overall disciplines, he's had over 50 fights, so he is as seasoned as they come. He's beat the likes of CB Dollaway and Rising. He beat King Mo. He beat Maldonado. Guys that have been around the UFC, guys that have been around Pride, Strikeforce. If you look through his record, it's got really big names on it as well. So Yuri Prochazka is no stranger to fighting high level talent, and we've seen him when he's been in the UFC. We've seen what he done to Volkan Ozdemir. That was quite terrifying. And then how he knocked out Dominic Reyes. Dominic Reyes, he gave John Jones one of the toughest fights we've ever seen, and Yuri flatlined him. He absolutely flatlined him, and he's only 29 years old, so he's only getting better. He's really just about hitting his prime. See, especially with your light heavyweights and your heavyweights, as Glover's shown you, they can go on deep into their 40s. So it's really interesting, but again, you can't count out Glover Teixeira. Obviously, Yuri can catch him on the feet. He's got slick Muay Thai. He's probably got something I'd probably argue he's got the best Muay Thai in the UFC. Between him and Matt Brown, maybe, and between the guys, Matt Brown's Muay Thai sticks out in my head all the time. Really a lot because he's got a lot of good trips and sweeps and stuff. But coming back to Yuri Prochazka, it's such an interesting fight because it's your classic, as you were saying earlier, striker versus grappler. If Glover Teixeira gets him on the ground, it could be game over. We've seen what Glover Teixeira done to Anthony Smith on the ground. We remember the cries of Anthony Smith saying, "My teeth are falling out." He basically just beat his teeth in, and he's in a 6 fight. He's won 6 fights in a row. His last loss, was, I think it was Corey Anderson. Yeah, it was Corey Anderson, who's he's a big loss to UFC, Corey Anderson. Since then, he's beat the likes of Jan Blachowicz, Iron Kuralaba. He beat Anthony Smith. I can't remember some of the other names he's beat off the top.
Krylov, Carl Robertson, and
Krylov. I forgot about that. And Krylov's so high level. So yeah, it can be a pick'em fight, and I find it very interesting now seeing that Yuri is the favourite. Yuri would be my favourite. I'll go Yuri via KO. We'll go KO. We'll not say TKO or stoppage. We'll just go KO. I think he'll flatlight him. But this is coming as a huge Yuri fan. I believe if Glover Teixeira gets him on the ground, it's a completely different fight. So it's all about how Yuri stops him getting him to the ground, how he handles himself in those transactions on the feet, how he manages his distance is very important. How he works the clinch is very important as well, because you don't see a lot of guys in the UFC that know how to work the clinch well, like know how to work plum clinch, know how to work 50-50 to the same kind of level as Prochazka. So I'm very interested to see how those transactions go and how that can impact the fight.
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of both guys. Whenever Glover won the belt from Jan Blachowicz, I'm also a massive Jan Blachowicz fan. I was crying simultaneous tears of joy and weeping for all my parlays that got murdered, along with Jan. But man, I have nightmares about watching Yuri just murder Dominic Reyes. And let's not forget that John Jones hit Dominic Reyes with everything in his arsenal and couldn't do to Reyes.
John sucks now.
Okay, settle down. Yuri nearly fucking killed this man. Like, I genuinely thought Reyes was dead. I will be wearing all black for Glover. I don't see the only thing that will win Glover this fight is his sheer old man strength. If he can get Prochazka down, man, even if he does, can he get to the back or can he isolate a limb? I don't know, man. Yuri climbs mountains with no safety gear on a random Tuesday as training. Like, he has a tree in his front yard of the little bit of land with the hut that he lives in by himself to train, and he punches this tree 500 times a day. The guy went to Japan after reading a book about the samurai to train in Japan because he felt connected to the place. He considers himself a real life modern day samurai. He's fucking nuts. And I just don't see any way that Glover's base in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu can possibly stand up to the tide that is Yuri Prochazka. People say, oh, he only has 3 fights in the UFC. Yeah, Paddy only has 2. And everybody's like, oh, but Paddy waited to join the UFC and, he stayed in Cage Warriors. Well, Yuri did the same thing in an arguably tougher promotion. So, I think Yuri would have been the man to beat John Jones if John was still in the light heavyweight division. But I don't think it matters who's across the cage from Yuri. I think he's dedicated. I think he's got the skills. And, I mean, he's also not a stupid guy. He's, he knows he's going to have to work on his takedown stuff. He's going to have been drilling that. He's probably worked on almost nothing new other than his takedown defense since fighting Dominic Reyes and his get-ups. So, yeah, I'm gonna have to take Yuri by knockout in the second. I'd be shocked if it makes it out of the second round. And it breaks my heart to say that because I'm such a huge Glover fan. It really does. But he's going home in a body bag.
All right, are you done now, or
I'm done. Sorry.
Okay. Listen, I'm going to be wearing black, not necessarily for Glover's career, but still for Dominic Reyes, because I'm not convinced that he's not dead. He still hasn't fought, and it's well over a year. Listen, when I was little, there was a guy. His name was Corey. He was huge, and he would punch metal lockers and cement for fun because he would have to get in fights after school, and he said that it really toughened up his knuckles. So I can only imagine what punching and elbowing trees day in and day out every single day when you believe that you're a samurai. I can only imagine how that feels when you get hit with that, on top of the fact that somebody who's training to know how to punch. Yuri Prochazka is an intimidating, scary human being that you never want to meet inside of an octagon. I'm sure he's a very nice guy outside of it, if you can get past the pure lunacy that he just exudes. That being said, you love Glover Teixeira. You love that maybe he can have that old man strength, and maybe try and challenge Yuri Prochazka. But I have to figure there's a reason why no one else has tried to challenge Yuri Prochazka on the ground. No one's even attempted to take him to the ground. We haven't even had to, inside of the UFC, look at his ability to defend takedowns because he's just had straight stand-up battles. Now, maybe I'm glossing over something here, but I mean, the pure viciousness that he hits people with, he is a little bit wild, so he is prone to sometimes making mistakes. But I think, like he said, he's got such this fight boner to make it happen that could potentially go against him. You could see, Glover be a little bit more tempered here and kind of wait for the opening, and maybe Yuri throws a big shot and then Glover gets into the ground, and that's that. But I don't know. I don't see how the hype train from Yuri Prochazka gets derailed. But then again, a lot of times on these UFC cards, when there's two huge favorites, both of them aren't going to win. And I would say that Valentina's a safer pick than Yuri is, even though Yuri seems like a pretty safe pick at this point. And Martin, to your point, it is pretty freaking gangster for him to have won the championship at age 41 or 42 years old and then continue to keep fighting and not just riding off into the sunset. That being said, I'm just like frightened of Yuri Prochazka, and I would bet that he's the reason why John Jones is like, yeah, no, I'm gonna cut it out to heavyweight, please. Because I think that, I mean, look, Dominic Reyes, and not to bring MMA math into this thing, but Dominic Reyes, probably on some of the scorecards, and depending on if you go back and watch that fight, you could conceivably give him that fight. Dominic Reyes was murdered by Yuri Prochazka legally. Like, I know that this is like sanctioned fighting, but there's got to be something that someone can do inside of that cage that's like, okay, you can't be doing that to people, no matter if it's written in the rules or not. And I think that's one of them. A spinning back elbow right to the temple. That has anybody even seen Dominic Reyes since? Like, are we positive he's alive? Because can he form words? Like, the poor guy, I'm sure, was eating purely smoothies for like 3 months after that. Like, I just. That gives me nightmares, and I still think about that finish.
That elbow was so bad, I still get migraines from it. And I've got a question for both of you. Do you know any other fighter that has 3 wins by corner stoppage and retirement? Do you know any other fighter that has more than 1 corner stoppage win? Off the top of your head. Who?
Kimbo Slice. Probably.
Okay. So 1, Kimbo.
And then that wasn't high caliber competition.
And that's Kimbo Slice. Like,
and that's out his back door. Well, that's in his back garden.
Exactly.
Bob Sapp, maybe.
Yuri does, and they're all in Risen. I don't know if there's anything more compelling than that. I mean, the guy has the guy was born to fight. If he'd have been born 1,000 years ago, he'd have been king of the Vikings. Like, no sweat. The guy is just such a specimen, and I completely agree. I think he's the reason John Jones left the light heavyweight division. I think at the time, John looked at heavyweight and said, okay, I could probably beat Stipe as it stands. Francis can't wrestle at the time. This was obviously before we knew that Francis was just
able to learn
and best friends with DC. If I was John Jones, I'd have run from Yuri. He's, as you said, Tom, he's a scary motherfucker.
Yeah, and like back to your point, and if I had to answer your question honestly, no, I can't think of anyone that has 3 stoppages and making people quit on the stool or retirement. With the caveat of like actual people who actually fight, who are doing that for a living. Like Kimbo Slice was fighting like middle school gym teachers. So like with that being said, like yeah, of course, be like, hey, I got to teach on Monday. Like I want like at least half of my brain to work.
Yeah.
So like yeah, no, it's purely intimidating in the fact that like you think he takes him like he almost got that little bit of like the Tyson Fury licking Deontay Wilder's blood in him. Like he's got that, but he just exudes that crazy, and it's amazing to watch. And I know Dana is so sick that he hasn't been able to get this guy in the cage for a year. But I'm expecting Yuri to go out there, make us all get another highlight reel finish, and then be pretty active. I expect him to be one of the more active champions, fighting every 4 to 6 months. Both because he's got the potential to make money. Someone's got to pay and keep the lights on in the old Shrek outhouse hut that he lives in. And so he's got the ability to make money now. He's got the notoriety, and finally he's achieved that top level that he spent all those years in rising, turning down UFC opportunities. I think he turned them down like more than once. I think twice, potentially. I don't know if it was a third time, but I think actually he took it on his third call. But either way, can't wait to watch him fight. I can wait for the retirement of Glover Teixeira, and I just hope that Yuri has a little bit of Khabib Nurmagomedov in him, going like, okay, I could embarrass you, but like I'm not going to. Similar to how Khabib handled that Justin Gaethje win. Any other last final thoughts about this fight, Valentina Shevchenko versus Talia Santos, about any of the fights on this card, Zhang Weili versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk? Anything? Final thoughts for UFC 275 or road to UFC?
I was just sorry, Jamie. I was just going to say I quite like the fact that Yuri doesn't fight too often. Like I quite like the fact that he fights once a year, then fucks off into the woods for the rest of the year, and clearly doesn't have any phone. But that man probably does not have a phone, so there's no way like Dana White can get in touch with him. He probably needs to send like carrier pigeon or put a message in a bottle and send it over to him. Like, it adds to the mystique. Adds to the mystique of the guy, and I think like Yuri Prochazka, he's everything the UFC wanted Johnny Walker to be and more. Like obviously Johnny Walker's still very very young and hopefully has a very big career ahead of him. But I think like Yuri Prochazka was just that step. Like that already kind of made step. Like he was already so high level when the UFC signed him, and he's come in, had 2 fights. Starts both of them in the second round, then fucked off for a year to punch a tree out his back garden. Like it's so cool. It's such a cool story. The hair and everything. Oh, I just love him.
The footage of Herb Dean checking Yuri before the Reyes fight, and he's like Herb Dean's a big guy, and Herb like looks at his hair, and he's like, "Can I touch it?" And Yuri just like bows his head, and Herb like feels it, and is like, "Okay, you're good." And
that was the first time a black guy has ever asked to touch a white guy's hair.
Yeah, but like it's everything about Yuri is just violence. The hair punching the tree. Have you seen
Loading
the
up
tree?
his right hand before he whacks you with it.
Ah, bro, he's just he is the king of violence. I think that should be his name.
He fights with his hands by his side as well. Like, he just mocks you.
He walked Reyes down with his hands by his sides. It was
his hands were like crossed. If you go back and watch that fight, he's literally holding his right hand with his left hand, being like, "It's coming, it's coming," like it was a shotgun, and fucking and wailed him with it. Excuse my. I've never seen anything like that. He literally cocks his right hand before he throws it.
I think I'd rather you put me in the octagon with somebody with a shotgun than you put me in there with Yuri Prochazka. Honestly, he's just. I'm so excited. I just want it to be 275 so soon. But obviously, we've got a huge week of fights this weekend and the road to the UFC before we can get to it. So I have to be patient.
With all that being said, thank you everyone at home for joining us. If you stayed through to the end, make sure you follow us on our socials at Pickin' Fights Tom, Jamie Frodo MMA, Martin Hamilton MMA. Follow us on Overtime Heroics. If you're here watching this on YouTube, drop a comment, drop a like, subscribe, turn on those notification bells so you don't want to miss anything. We've had a lot of fighter interviews coming through. Yuri Prochazka, for one of them, Danny Podesky doing a phenomenal job about getting those interviews. We have a collaboration coming in with what is it? Is it ONE FC or where's our collaboration with that we're doing now? Well, this is probably not great on my part, but either way, I kind of just say things and then I realize halfway through I don't know what I'm talking about. Regardless, follow us on Twitter, OT Heroics MMA, and then remember, go online, Overtime Heroics MMA. We got all you need in combat sports articles published daily. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Enjoy the fights, everyone.